When you take x times x, what do you get?
X squared.
X squared. Okay, x times 5. 1 times x. And 1 times 5 is?
5.
Okay, what happens now? We have like terms we can combine. So we have x squared. 5x plus 1x would give us
6x.
plus 5.
So Dad's here. You can go outside. Okay.
I'm just going up to the source. He's out in the parking lot, okay? Sorry. I had 6 kids. So. Alright. Multiplying these. M times m.
M squared.
M times 6. Negative 4 times m.
Minus 4. Minus 4.
So then if we add like terms, we have m squared.
Plus 2m. Minus 24.
Multiply these. K times k.
Minus 7.
So that gives us k squared minus 10k plus 20. Okay. Today, we are going to start with problems like this and work backwards to get the original ones. So let's look and see if we have any patterns. This number, how did we get the 5, the 21, the negative 24? How does that relate to these originals? We did 1 times 5 to get 5, right? Negative 4 times 6 to get negative 4. Negative 7 times negative 3 to get a positive 21. So the constant, we have to multiply to get that number. The middle term came from adding. 5 plus 1 is 6. Negative 4 plus 6 is 2. Negative 7 plus 3 is negative 10. So when we're working backwards, we are trying to rewrite it as the original parentheses. So we are trying to find two integers that will multiply to the constant and add to the middle number. Let's say. So if it's of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, you want it to multiply to c and add to b. All right, so for example, if I gave you x squared plus 7x plus 12, I'm looking for two numbers that would multiply to 12 and add to 7. Okay, now some of you are probably going to this might be easier than others because we have to think about our multiplication. So if you struggle with multiplication facts, it might help you to multiply things out or to make a list. Things that multiply to 12. You could do 1 times 12. Does that add up to 7? No. You could do 2 times 6. Does that add to 7? No. We can do 3 times 4. Does that add to 7? Yes. So my numbers are 3 and 4. So this would factor into x plus 3, x plus 4. Now, if I wanted to check it, what would we do? Distribute it. If we multiply it out, okay, x times x is x squared. X times 4 is 4x. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 4 is 12. So we get x squared plus 7x plus 12. Is that what we started with? Yeah. So on any factoring problem, we can always double check our answer by multiplying it out and seeing if we get the original back. Okay? Any questions so far? So let's practice this. So n squared plus 9n plus 20. Some of you might just be able to look at that and know your numbers. If you can't, you might need a list of numbers out to the side. Okay, you don't have to write out the numbers, but it can help you. So if you're thinking about things that multiply to 20, 1 times 20. Remember, they need to multiply to 20 and add to 9. Does that work? No. If you do 2 and 10, can you do 20 divided by 3? No. 20 divided by 4 is 5. Does that add to 9? Yes. So what would my two parentheses be? X plus 4, and my other number was positive 5, so x plus 5. Alright. If I look at number 2. Okay, they need to multiply to 18 and add to 9. So things that multiply to 18, you can do 1 times 18. 2 times 9. 3 times 6. Do any of these work? 3 times 6. So what would my parentheses be?
X plus 3, X plus 6.
Except I switched the variable to w. So w plus 3, w plus 6. Alright, you guys try 3 and 4. So, we need two numbers that multiply to 24, add to 10. 6 and 4. So we could say a plus 6, a plus 4.
Does it matter what we put?
No. So multiplication order doesn't matter. So if you put a plus 4, a plus 6, that's also fine. Number 4. What multiplies to 1 and adds to 2? Y plus 1, y plus 4. Alright. Now let's look at the next one. This kind of has a different twist to it. So we have n squared plus 3n minus 18. So if your numbers multiply to equal a negative, what does that tell you about those numbers? When do you get a negative for multiplying? When one is positive and one is negative, right? We also know, and everybody pay close attention here because this gives people trouble sometimes. They have to multiply to a negative, but they have to add up to a positive. So we know one of the numbers is negative. But if they're going to add up to be positive, the bigger number has to be positive. So if we think about things that multiply to 18, we have 1 and 18, but we need the bigger number to be positive and the smaller one to be negative so that we get a negative 18. Okay, that does not add to 3. We could do a negative 2 and a positive 9. Does that work? No. We could do negative 3 times 6. So those multiply to negative 18 and they add to positive 3. So what would my parentheses look like?
N plus 6, N minus 3.
N plus 6, N minus 3. And you could have N minus 3, N plus 6. The order doesn't matter. Number 6. So I need two things that multiply to a negative 8 and add to a positive 2. So I know we have to have a negative and a positive, and the bigger one has to be positive. So what's it going to be? X minus 2, x plus 4. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Negative 2 plus 4 is positive 2. You guys try 7 and 8 for me. So, multiply to a negative 6 and add to positive 1. So I know we have a positive and a negative, but I also know if they're going to add up to be positive, the bigger one has to be positive. So it could be like a -1 and a +6. It could be a -2 and a +3. Which one works? Okay, so it would be G minus 2, G plus 3. This one, multiply 45, add to a +4. So we know we have to have the bigger number positive. So we could do a -1 times a +45. Can you do 45 divided by 2? Okay. 3 and 15. Can you do 45 divided by 4? If you do 5 and 9. So what works? Yep. So it'd be C minus 5, C plus 9. Or you could flip them. C plus 9, C minus 5. That doesn't matter. Okay, questions so far? Let's look at the next one. So what do these have to multiply to? Multiply -3. And this time I have to add to a -2. So what does that tell you? They can't both be negative because a negative times a negative is positive. So because they multiply to a negative, I know one of them is negative. Because they add to a negative, which one is negative? The bigger one has to be the negative number. Okay, so things that multiply to 3. We could do 1 and 3, but we know one of them is negative, and since I want a negative in the middle, it has to be the bigger one. -1, or 1 times -3 is -3. 1 minus 3 is -2. So this factors into a plus 1, a minus 3. All right, number 10, multiply to a -30 and add to a -7. Can you think of anything? So we could do, we know the bigger one's negative, so we'll +1 and -30, +2 and -15, +3 and -10, +5 and -6. Which one works? 3 and 10. So it would be x plus 3, x minus 10. All right, everybody, let's jump down to 13 real quick. Okay, so everybody make sure you are paying attention to the differences. You have to watch your signs. If they multiply to a negative, we know one is negative and one is positive. But if they multiply to a positive, that tells us both numbers could have been positive, or they could have both been negative. So this time they're multiplying to a positive 24. So I know they have the same sign, and they add up to a -11. So if they're going to add to be a negative, both of these numbers are negatives. So what multiplies to 24 and adds to -11? 8 and 3. And since they have to add up to be a negative, it would be x minus 8, x minus 3. Okay, 14. They have to multiply to a positive 49 and add to -14. So what would do that? Okay, I want you guys to try 11, 12, 15, and 16. So some of you might just be able to look at them. If you are struggling, make the list of numbers. If they multiply to a negative, you know you have a positive and a negative. If they add to a negative, the bigger one is negative. So I just start with 1. You could do +1 and -63. Can you do 63 divided by 2? No, so we can't do any evens. We could do 3 and -21. You can't do 4 or 5 or 6. You could do 7 and negative 9. So that would give it to us. So it's b plus 7, b minus 9. This one, what multiplies to a negative 64 and adds to a negative 12? So we know. You can go through the list that helps you. So it would be positive 4, negative 16. And 15, they multiply to a positive, so they have the same sign, but they add to a negative, so both are negative. So like negative 1, negative 72. Negative 2 and negative 36. Negative 3 and negative 24. What is it? Negative 9, negative 8. So you just keep going through your list until you come up with it. This one, what multiplies to a positive 50 and adds to a negative 15? Okay. This is where we are stopping today. I am giving you a handout, and I want you to try 1 through 18 on that handout.